Yes, you are welcome to today's lecture. And in teaching biology at senior secondary school, today we shall start by looking at service learning in teaching biology. That is, how do we use service learning in the teaching of biology? But first, let's look at what service learning is. When we talk about service learning, it's actually an educational approach that combines learning objectives with community service in order to promote or to provide a pragmatic, progressive learning experience while meeting the societal need. It is actually a learning pedagogy that involves experience. That's why we call it experiential learning pedagogy. It moves students beyond the classroom so that they will become active participants in learning, the knowledge they're supposed to learn and acquire the necessary knowledge as well as skills. What we're saying in this is that the learning, that particular knowledge or skill that students are actually supposed to learn in a particular concept are actually taken beyond the classroom, outside the classroom. And while it is being taken outside the classroom to the community, it will meet the community problems and challenges. And so the community will, the society will always benefit because it's going to meet the societal needs. In biology teaching, service learning pedagogy can integrate a community service with instruction. That is, when you put community service in the instruction, that is in the process of teaching the student, the community service are embedded within the content being taught. That is, within the content that you are considering that you are teaching your student, community service will be embedded there. And that is, when community service is embedded, we refer to that type of pedagogy or that type of method of teaching as service learning. And the students are required to formally acquire knowledge and skills by solving community problems and needs. Let's look at this example. If you are teaching a topic like control of diseases, let's look at malaria as a common disease in our environment. So we know the different ways by which we can control diseases. Malaria is a vector-borne disease. So when you now take your students out of the classroom to carry out the community activities that will involve the control of this prevalent disease in a community, that is not just teaching them the theory within the classroom, but you take them out to the community and see where we have stagnant waters, where we have blocked drainages, and you try to show them this blocked drainage encourages the growth of mosquito. They can see the developmental stages of mosquito, and you try to, through the drainage, that is, the drainage is through removed in such a way that water will not be able to stay there, and so when water is not able to stay there, malaria parasites will not be able to grow. And in that case, in that environment, in that community, you have been able to show in a pragmatic way how to control malaria through the removal or the control or the reduction of malaria causing agents, that is the mosquito. So using that's an example of service learning, and that's why we say that service learning has a positive impact on students' attendance, because when students are taken outside the classroom to have a practical experience of particular knowledge, they are always eager to learn. So they are always, most students will want to attend. And the next thing is that, aside the fact that they will attend, they actually, they will be engaged. So it improves or encourages students' attendance as well as a learning engagement among students. Now, the next thing we want to look at practical teaching and practical laboratory skills. Teaching practical is indispensable in science subjects. In fact, you can say that one major thing that differentiates science subjects from every other subject is the practical aspect. And biology being a science subject, practical is very important. Practical works, when we talk about practicals or practical works, we are referring to hands-on activities, experiments, investigations that are conducted in the context of a teaching of science and teaching and learning of science, and most especially in this case in the teaching of and learning of biology. It involves, like I said last time, like I said earlier, it involves investigation, demonstration, experimentation, as well as illustration of phenomena, providing experiences or getting feel of phenomena by students. That is, when you say that this phenomena or this biological content is like this, you have to actually, allow students to have a practical experience. See that, investigate, carry out the experiment, have an activity or have activities on it, so that they will actually be able to experience and be able to get the real knowledge of the content or the context that is being discussed or explained. It allows the development of practical skills in scientific process and conceptual understanding. When practical take place, students will be able to develop practical skills. That is, they'll be able to develop scientific process. When we say scientific process, like communication, observation, measurement, because all these things are involved in practical activities, and they will be able to have conceptual understanding of so many concepts. Practical in biology actually promotes effective learning. Most times when students see what they are to learn, they remember more than when they are just told without any experience or evidence. So when practical takes place, or when students are taught practical, it promotes their learning and it enables students to experience and observe relevant biology phenomena or content, which will help their understanding and learning. Then when you now talk about laboratory skills are actually the capability to carry out certain tasks in a laboratory setting. In biology, for example, the ability to carry out some tasks in biology lab will be referred to as a laboratory skills. Like, for example, ability to create hypotheses, to keep record of activities that take place in the laboratory, ability to carry out dissection of a flower, dissection of an animal, ability to sterilize equipment, how to sterilize equipment. All these ones are examples of laboratory skills. So in conclusion, one can say that laboratory skills is just one's ability or a student's ability to be able to carry out all this or perform all these tasks in the biology lab. Now let's look at the laboratory itself in teaching biology. The first thing we need to look at or need to understand in laboratory in teaching biology is the sign of the laboratory. When you talk about the sign of any biology lab, there's need to carefully consider certain things to ensure usability and functionality. That is, to ensure that the laboratory will be useful and to also ensure that the laboratory will be able to function. There are certain things that need to be considered in designing biology lab. The first one we're looking at here is use of space and the workflow within the laboratory. To site a lab, you have to consider the use of space. That is, space that there must be enough space available in the lab to work. Enough space so that during the practical activities, there will be enough space for both the teacher and the students to move within the laboratory. That's what we mean by use of space and workflow within laboratory. The next one is equipment and furniture. It is important to consider the equipment and furniture that will be, will be put in the laboratory. You have to consider the layout, that is how the furniture will be laid out, the seating, the desk or table that will be put in the laboratory, how they will be fixed, how they will be laid out, that is their position, so that when students are seated in the laboratory and the teacher just want to demonstrate, the students will be able to sit comfortably and face the teacher while demonstrating. So it is important to consider the equipment and the furniture, the equipment that will be there, that needs to be there, and so many other things, the furniture that has to be there to make the laboratory to be functional. The third one is facilities, fixtures, and fittings. When you talk about facilities, we're talking about those things that will be there. Fixtures, we're talking about those things that will be fixed or fitted there. And that's, we're talking about things like electricity, gas, water, sink, and some other ones. Biology laboratory, it is important that biology laboratory has required electricity. It has to be, it has to be lighting up. The laboratory must have sufficient illumination, that is, must have sufficient electricity. There must be a place where the gas will be positioned for experiments to take place, must have some fixtures and fixtures like sinks. Sinks should be positioned in a way that the water will be flowing out from the laboratory anytime there is activity or activities that are taking place that will involve the use of water. So there should be appropriate flow, appropriate location of sink for appropriate flow of used water out of the laboratory. Also, we have to consider some fittings, like you have to consider the floor, the ceiling. Most times the floor, for example, nowadays that tiling of floor is common. The floor in laboratory is not normally advisable to tile because during the process of practical activities, water may just pour on the floor, and when water pour on the floor, if anyone did not know that water has poured on a particular place, it can cause someone to, to slip and fall. So to avoid slippery or something like that, it is better that the floor remains, untiled, or remains ruffled. A rough surface, a rough floor surface is better, so that it will be, it will not cause anything that will cause anybody to fall. Then the next one is clean environment. The choice of the furnitures, the fixtures, the fittings must allow a certain level of cleanliness. That is, those things that will be fixed there, that will the facilities that will be provided must allow a situation where the laboratory will be clean enough. That is, after activities, for example, the sink should be the type that will be clean easily. That is, after the work, that one can clean easily. The floor or some other fixtures should be those ones that supports or that will support adequate cleaning of the environment. The next one is regulatory requirements. The requirements, we have some regulatory requirements. That is, there are some requirements or standards that are supposed to, be in a biology laboratory. And these are usually provided by, most times by professional bodies like STAN, for example, Science Teachers Association of Nigeria. They normally provide some regulatory requirements, that is, those things that are supposed to be present in biology laboratory. That is, in a secondary school, a biology laboratory must have this. That's what we mean by regulatory requirement. Then the other one is what we refer to as a specialist needs. The biology lab must be designed in such a way that it will support access by people with special needs. For example, the disabled. It should be provided in such a way that the facilities inside should support even accessing it, entering it. There should be option for entrance that will allow people or students with special needs, even teachers with special needs. This is very, very important. Now we're going to look at laboratory management. There's need to manage laboratory. And when we talk about laboratory management, this means or this involves organization and supervision of facilities that we have in the laboratory. Organizing these facilities, the equipment, the resources, and the hands-on activities, as well as experiments in biology lab. All these things need to be organized, and it also includes the ordering of laboratory equipment and materials. You had to keep a record of what and what are available at a particular time, what and what have we exhausted, maybe like consumables now. That yes, we need to order for this, we need to keep a record, and this is usually done by the teacher, by the biology teacher, together with the laboratory assistant. You look at those things that are there, that is, those things that are present, those things that are available, and those things that needs to be ordered, that is the facilities that needs to be ordered, those ones that are damaged, those ones that needs to be replaced. And it is also part of the management that you care for this caring for these laboratory equipments and materials, maintaining them, maintaining these ones, caring for them, how to clean them. All these ones are part of the laboratory management. Then another one is we need to look at is laboratory safety. Biology lab and some other labs, but most especially biology lab, is a laboratory that you have so many things present inside there that could be dangerous. Let me put it like that. We have chemicals that could be dangerous to our health, that could be hazardous. We have, especially when they are badly handled, you have specimens that are there that could scared. Sometimes some of them could be alive, sometimes some of them are preserved, and even while they are preserved, sometimes could scare some students. So we have to think of laboratory safety, and this is why laboratory safety is very important in the use of a biology lab. So in safety, in laboratory safety, there must be safety enforcement of safety regulations. We have safety regulations, safety rules and laws. The enforcements are the responsibilities of the users, those that are involved in the biology instruction, those that are involved in biology instruction, so those that are involved in the use of biology laboratory. And these are most especially in any school setting. In a secondary school setting, the principal is the overall overall head of department, so it is his or her responsibility. But narrowing it down to biology, it is also, or it is especially the responsibility of biology teachers and biology students, and each have the specific roles. That is, the biology teachers have their specific roles, while the biology students also have their specific roles. Let's look at few of teachers' responsibilities. It is the responsibility of the teacher, biology teacher, to prepare laboratory activities. You prepare the activities that will take place in the lab. In fact, you prepare it before the activities commence. If it's experiment, for example, it is the responsibility of the teacher to carry out the experiment before the time of the experiment, and it's also the responsibility of the teacher to instruct students on safety practices in biology laboratory. That is, things that you have to do that involves safety in biology lab. ensures, the third one is to ensure proper conduct in the laboratory. The teacher, the biology teacher, should ensure that there's a proper conduct in the laboratory, proper conduct especially by the students. And it's also his duty or her duty or responsibilities to ensure safe keep of laboratory equipment and materials, that the laboratory equipments are properly kept as well as materials. We have some equipments that are not kept in the open lab but are kept in the what we refer to as preparatory room. It is the responsibility of the teacher to ensure that these are properly kept. And the next one is maintenance of chemicals. The teacher's responsibility to maintain chemicals. It is important to maintain all these chemicals, to keep them, either to keep them where they are supposed to be. In biology lab, most times chemicals are kept in the preparatory room to avoid, students playing with dangerous chemicals in the, in the open lab. And it is also the responsibility of the teacher, the biology teacher, to educate the students on safety procedures. We have safety procedures in the lab. It is the responsibility of the biology teacher to explain, to educate students on safety procedures. Now let's look at student responsibilities. When we talk about student responsibilities, the first one about or the first responsibility of student is proper conduct in the laboratory. It is important that students conduct themselves appropriately in the laboratory. Laboratory, biology lab is not a place where students play. You are not supposed to play. You are supposed to conduct yourself accordingly. That is, according to the directive of the biology teacher. Then they had to know, another one is to know emergency procedure. When the teacher gives the or educates the students on emergency procedure, the students must learn it. They had to know this procedure. Sometimes it is advisable that the teacher writes out these procedures and pastes somewhere in the lab, maybe by the entrance or inside. Like, for example, for them to know the exits that, the exits that enters the lab, so that they will know, and to know the emergency exit in case. They should also know the electrical switch that we have in the lab, so that they don't carelessly switch on anything when they are not supposed to. So it is the responsibility of students to know the emergency procedure, and it is also the responsibility of students to keep the laboratory, that is, after the activities, the experiments, or even before. They should have it in mind, students should have it in mind, that cleaning or keeping the laboratory clean is very important, like cleaning the facilities used, cleaning of the workspace, to ensure that the workspace is clean. You don't come to the lab and just drop anything or just pour anything. It's very important. And that is why the next point is that students should imbibe hygiene practices. Hygiene practices is very important. When you are working in the lab, you have to keep your hands off from your eye. Keep your hands off from your eye or eyes. Keep your hand off from your ears. You don't eat in or drink in the lab. If you wear glove, immediately after you wash your hands. In fact, you had to, when you leave the lab, before you carry out any activity, personal activity, you had to ensure you wash your hands. So this is important. Then another responsibility of the student is proper handling of chemicals. Students should handle chemicals as directed. They should not handle chemicals anyhow. Students should always wait for instructions in handling chemicals while in the laboratory. And importantly, they are not even supposed to enter the laboratory or carry out any experiment or investigation or anything without the instruction from the biology teacher. And another thing is correct apparel for laboratory practices. For laboratory practices, it is important that students put on correct apparel. You put on your lab coat that is purely covering. You cover a long sleeve lab coat and it is long. For it is not advisable to enter biology lab or carry out laboratory activities with long hairs. Ladies with or girls with long hair are always advisable to tuck their hairs because it could be dangerous. When the hair is just flying about, you may be carrying an experiment and the hair can just, like those that put a wave on or attachment, it can carelessly enter the chemicals or carelessly enter even the fire. So this is very, very important. But nevertheless, it is also important to note that irrespective of this, it is still possible that accidents can happen. And that is why it is important to have first aid in biology lab. In case of accident, every biology laboratory must have first aid box. And it is important that the first aid box must be real first aid box, not an empty box. And this box must contain a painkiller medicine, cotton wool, plaster, bandage, iodine, gauze, scissors, razor blade, any one not used one, and Vaseline. All these ones will help to administer first aid on anyone that sustain any uh, injury or even any accident within the lab before the person is taken to health center or hospital. Thank you.